So good afternoon and welcome to this third uh, book reading session that we started a couple of months back. It's a pleasure to have with us Dr. Pradisha Ashok, who is an assistant professor at IIIT Bangalore. She has finished her PhD from Indian Institute of Science. She was a postdoctoral fellow at the Math Science Institute in Chennai before joining IIIT Bangalore. Her research interests are in the field of theoretical computer science. In addition to science, Professor Pradisha is passionate about dance, music, and literature. She always likes to learn new things and is also a student of classical dance. She likes reading and is a member of the Bangalore chapter of BYOB, Bring Your Own Book Club. She hails from Kerala and tries to closely follow Malayalam literature. And today she'll be reading two Malayalam novels with us, Randa Musam by M.T. Vasudevan Nair and Ini Injan Urangattehe by P.K. Balakrishnan. Over to you, Pradisha.
Hello all. Okay, so when I decided to give this talk, I was very confused as to which book to talk about. The reader in me wanted to talk about all the books that I have read, and with much difficulty, I decided on two books. But to accommodate or to compensate that, I will be talking a lot about number of writers and their work. So, okay. So maybe I'll start. Yes. So I'll call the talk the Epic Mahabharata, two narratives. So the two books that I have selected, both of them are narratives of different narratives of the Epic Mahabharata. Okay. And before I start, I'll try to give a short introduction to Malayalam literature. I may add at this point that I'm not an expert of this field. Therefore, there might be some imperfections or maybe even some inaccuracies when in what I'm saying. So Malayalam, it's a South Dravidian language spoken in the small state of Kerala. It's also spoken in the Union Territory of Lakshadweep and also parts of the Union Territory, Puducherry. In Malayalam literature, the earliest known work is Ramacharitam from 12th century. So the author is acknowledged to be Chairman, but the real identity of the author or where he's from is not known. There are conjectures, but nothing specific is known about the author. The early literature in Malayalam was mostly in the form of Pattu literature. Pattu literature literally means song literature. So the literature was in the form of songs, like songs praising goddesses. For example, there was a form of or a series of songs called Bhadrakali Pattu, which were songs praising the goddess Kali. Similarly, there were songs praising brave soldiers or songs which are part of rituals or songs which was sung by people of a particular community and so on. So this was the early literature. Also later, a lot of works in Malayalam literature was in the form of Manipravalam. So Manipravalam is a mix of Sanskrit and Malayalam. And it was used mainly by the elite, understandably, because the Sanskrit literature was not very accessible to all people in all communities. So it was mainly popular among the elite communities. And also, Manipravalam was used in many temple dramatic performances like Kuthu, Kudiyatam, etc. So in these performances, it was common that the hero of these dramatic performances, they will speak or they will converse in Sanskrit using Sanskrit poetry, whereas the narrator or the Vidushaka or the clown, they were using a mix of Sanskrit and Malayalam. And between 12th and 14th century, a number of works in Manipravalam can be broadly classified into two. There were other also, but the main works were all like message poems, like Sandesha Kavyams, which again follow the similar Sandesha Kavyam from Sanskrit, and also Achi Charitams, which is mainly like tales of courtesans or ladies. Okay. And after this, by between 13th century or so, another movement called the Bhakti movement became very popular. It was the main theme of this movement was Bhakti. And main exponents of this movements, they're collectively known as the Niranam poets. These are believed to be a number of poets who all hailing from the same family, and they are believed to live between 13th to 15th century. Okay, so three famous names in Niranam poets is Madhava Panikar, Shankara Panikar, and Rama Panikar. They have a lot of works, and the most famous work from the Niranam poets, from the Niranam school, is the Kanasha Ramayana. It's a retelling of Ramayana in and there were also what is called as the Champu Kavyas, or it's a mix of Padya and or the mix of poetry and prose. Again, in Bhakti movement, there were many Champus, including the Ramayana Champu and Bharata Champu, which is again retellings of Ramayana and Mahabharata. So this Bhakti movement was very different from the earlier Manipravalam works. Because Manipravalam works was mostly in about it's in like more romantic or sensual, or at times even erotic literature. But Bhakti movement was based on Bhakti, so the work was of completely different type. Also, Patar school was very strong in Bhakti movement. A very famous work is Krishna Gatha from Cherisheri Nambudiri. And between 16th and 19th century, or 16th century onwards, Malayalam literature was developed into a more structured form. And a very famous name who's related to this transition is Tunjatha Ramanujan Ezhuthachan. He is considered the father of Malayalam literature, or the father of modern Malayalam. So even the alphabets that we use in Malayalam now currently is developed by Tunjatha Ramanujan Ezhuthachan. And he also introduced this the Kilipattu form of writing, or Kilipattu form of poetry. And one of the famous Kilipattu that he has written is the Adhyatma Ramayanam Kilipattu. So Tunjatha Ramanujan Ezhuthachan, most of his work were kind of inspired from Sanskrit literature, or like it's again retellings of stories from Ramayana and Bharata and so on. So his Adhyatma Ramayanam Kilipattu is it's again it's the form of okay. So we read in Kerala households usually Ramayana is read in the Kilipattu form. Okay, so and it is still very popular. I mean, it's still being heard too. And another famous poet in this Bhakti movement was Pundanam Nambudiri. His famous work being Jnanapana. And also at this point, a lot of literature was also influenced by various performance arts. For example, Kathakali, the songs which are used in the Kathakali performances, they're called Atakathas. So there's a rich literature in that area. For example, Unnai Warrior has written a number of Atakathas. One famous one being Nalacharitam Atakatha. You can still see performances based on that in Kathakali performances. And another literature related to performance arts are Vanjipattu. So Vanjipattu is it's the songs which are sung during boat races. So this was, understandably, it was very popular in this Kuttanadu region in Alappuzha, where there are many backwaters, and therefore it was the boat races and all this boat songs were very popular. A famous work here is Kujela Vritam Vanjipattu by Ramapurathu Warrior. So this is like a very rhythmic songs. So clearly it was used by boatmen, these were boat songs. So it was very like nice to hear. And And also Thullal songs. So Thullal is another performance art which was, I would say, more nearer or more accessible to common man than other temple or other performance arts like Kathakali or Kuthu. So it was introduced by Kunjan Nambiar, and again he has a number of works or he has written a lot of Thullal songs. In fact, Kunjan Nambiar is along with Tunjatta Edutachan and Cherusheri is considered as the Prajina Kavitraya or the ancient trio of poets of Malayalam. So another performance art based literature, Margangali songs. So this was common in uh, Christian households. So they were like mainly these songs told the stories of Thomas the Apostle. Now moving forward, 19th century onwards, okay, so there's again the literature became more structured as well as it became different. So at this time there were a lot of changes in the society also, or there were a lot of reforms, societal reforms happening, and naturally it reflected in the literature. So for this period, three important poets who are known as uh, the modern trio of poets or the Adhunika Kavitraya are Kumaranashan, Vallathol, and Ullur. So yeah, so this is Kumaranashan, and this is Ullur and Vallathol. So Vallathol is also the founder of the famous Kerala Kalamandalam. Uh, it's the famous university for performance arts. Okay. So many of these poets were also related to or were also involved in this societal reform. So there were also social reformers. Kumaranashan here, for example, he was a famous disciple of Sri Narayana Gurudevan, who was a spiritual leader as well as a social reformer and also like a big literary figure, I'll say, who fought against the caste system in Kerala. So many of his work reflect his this change in the society or this need for change in the society. Okay. And later, okay, so the poetry after this has, okay, so I'm not naming everybody. So after this, there is like a big growth again from modern to modern romantics to even postmodern poetry. I just said some names like Idasheri, Ayyappan, P. G. Shankarakuruppa, Vayalar, ONV, Vailopilli, Balayanthan Chullikada, and so on. Okay. I would also like to talk about some prose literature. So prose was like earlier, as I said, the earlier literature was more like poetry form or a mix of poetry and prose. So in the colonial times, there were some works in which can be considered as prose, but there are not many major works were not. Also, there were some translations from for translations of foreign works. But the first Malayalam novel to be published was Kundalada in 1887 by Appu Nedangadi. It was a short novel, but again, but it's the first Malayalam novel to be published. The first major Malayalam novel to be published was Indulekha in 1889 by O. Chandumena. So this novel, it's the main protagonist of the novel is Indulekha, a lady from a Nair household, a young lady from Nair household. And I will say Indulekha might be the first feminist character in Malayalam literature. So she's portrayed as a lady who was educated, who has her opinions, and who stood for herself, and who was not or who was brave enough to tell her opinions. So this was a major change. You know, when the Malayalam literature was or started, or during the initial times, from the works like Achi Charitams, which like were more like objectification of women, to telling the story of an independent woman in the first novel. So this is like a major change, or it's kind of reflected the society also. And shortly after Indulega, in 1891, Marthanda Varma, another novel was by C.V. Raman Pillai was published. Both Chandu Menon and Ravan Pillai came up with more novels. Yeah, sadly, Chandu Menon's second novel, he couldn't finish it. He passed away before he finished it. But anyway, it was published. When C.V. Raman Pillai came with more novels like Dharmaraja and so on. After independence, clearly there was a lot of change in the literature, or I think literature grew in a very positive way. Also, like after independence, during the time or just before independence, the freedom struggle and all this work towards the social reforms, and also formation of Kerala state, all this happened with like around this period. So understandably, like the work reflected or said a lot about the society at that time. So I just wanted to mention three names, maybe three important names from those times. So one is the first one is P. Keshavadeva. He has come up with a number. He has published a lot of important works, like a novelist and short story writer. He has published major works like Odayal Minna and all. And second is Tagari Shivashankaran Pillai. He had a number of famous works like Randidangadi, Kayar, Chemmin, etc. So many of these works, they told the story of common men also. So earlier literature was mostly about work from or work about gods, or about mythological characters and all. Whereas now the literature was also telling the stories of people from different communities like they were telling the stories of fishermen, or telling the stories of women, telling the stories of scavengers even, and so on. So, and one of the reason being, all many of these writers were also involved in or were directly in touch with the rest of the society. Many of them were involved in politics. Many of them were involved in or were freedom fighters, for example. And okay, so this reflected in the literature. And one more name I want to tell is Vaikom Muhammad Bashir. Okay, where do I start, or what do I tell about this genius writer? How much ever I say, I don't think I can do justice to the genius of this great man. Vaikom Muhammad Bashir is, other things, is a writer, and he wrote in a very different way. His writings were very different from what was written in Malayalam till then. For one, he didn't distinguish or differentiate between literary language and a spoken language. Sometimes his works were not even were not following, or maybe sometimes his sentences were not even grammatically correct. He has himself told that he doesn't care about grammar. What he cared about is telling a story, and telling a story in a way the people will understand. So he kind of changed the Malayalam literature in such a way that it is more accessible to common men, and it can be appreciated by common men. And he wrote a deceptively simple language, but in such a strong language. It's a number of works uh, written by Vaikom Muhammad Bashir, like a lot of short stories and also novels, including Endu Pikirani Indarnu and Balya Kalasaki and Pathumedadu and so on. He wrote most of his work were about common men and people who you can see around you. So this led to, the later Malayalam literature was open to a number of writings about which are close to common men. And again, I'm just mentioning some name. This is not a complete list for sure. I'm sure. So there is like Pottekada, O.V. Vijayan. Okay, I should mention O.V. Vijayan's Khasakinde Idihasam, a very classic work from Kerala. So Viken was more like a more satirist kind of writer. Uruba Lelidambika Antarjanam wrote many work, including Agni Sakshi, a very famous work of her. Then P. Padmanabhan, M.T. Madhavikuti, a very brave writer, Madhavikutti. Mukundan, his famous work being Mayet Pureda Thirangal, and Anand, and the current generation, maybe some from the current generation, Benjamin Kar, Mira, Subhash Chandran, S. Harish, and so on. Okay, right. So I will start with the first book that I want to talk about, or I'll start with the author of the first book, M.T. Vasudevan Nair. M.T. Vasudevan Nair, or Madathu Tekkepattu Vasudevan Nair, born in 1933. He published his first work, his first a collection of short stories in 1951 or 52. He's still an active writer. He's a novelist, a short story writer. He's also a film screenplay writer and a film director. He was also the chief editor of a major Malayalam weekly, illustrated weekly called Madhrubhumi. And as an editor, he also was responsible, or he was also encouraged a lot of new talent to come into the literature. Okay, he has won notable many awards, including Jnanapeetham, Padma Bhushan, Kendra Sahitya Academy Award, and so on. And as I said, he is also a film screenplay director, writer and director. He has won many awards in that area also. He has won, I think, 4 or 5 or more, maybe more national film awards, and also maybe 10 or 11 Kerala State Film Awards. A really multi-talented person. Okay, some of his works are, so these are all his novels. He has written a number of short stories and screenplays also. Many consider his Nalikette as one of his famous work, and also there is Aksharavittu, Kalam, Manya, Vanaprastham, and so on. Okay, and okay, so I will be talking about. I would like to add something about this book. Rendamulam. Rendamulam is maybe the best work by M.T. So published in 1984, it has won many awards, including the Vailar Award. Vailar Award is the award given to the best Malayalam literary work, and it's also translated to many languages. So, to my knowledge, there are 2 English translations. The first one is called Second Turn, and maybe I'm not sure if it is still in print. The second one is called Bhima the Lone Warrior. Maybe I think that is still available. Okay, so what is Rendamulam? It's telling of the great epic Mahabharatam through the eyes of the second Pandava brother Bhima. Okay, and the novel, the story of Mahabharatam is not narrated as a great mythology work, but it's more like the novel tries to demythify Mahabharata, or that is tell the story in Mahabharata where the characters are more portrayed as humans. Okay? Characters are like humans with their own weaknesses and without their supernatural powers or their divine aura. So M.T. has tried to tell the story through the eyes of Bhima. So this is like a POV, like a point of view kind of literature. Okay, and why is it called Rendamulam? Rendamulam the literary meaning is second chance or second turn. So you can think of this as, or you can interpret the title as Bhima was the second born of second Pandava. He always got only a second turn in many things in life. Okay, like his or like in his right to the throne, or a lot of things, or the praise that he deserved. Like everywhere he has given only the second chance, and therefore maybe the title Rendamulam. Okay, now what does M.T. try to, or what is saying about Bhima? So the idea of the novel is that Bhima is a character who's rather underappreciated. As a second born, he has never received his share of appreciation and applause. His suggestions usually are never sought, or his decisions or suggestions, they are never sought or never being heeded to. So in many places in Mahabharata, like we can see that Pandavas are very much dependent on the physical strength and mental agility of Bhima on numerous occasions. But there were not many open expressions of gratitude for him, even from his brothers or from his mother, from his wives, including Draupadi. Okay, so he is a character who has not given the affection that he deserved. Okay, and here this is not very different from many other characters of MT from his other stories. So MT usually writes about, most of his other works is about families or characters from families in a village society. So he mostly, like at least around 80s and 90s, he most of his work was stories about this big families in from villages. Whereas Randamuram is a big contrast, or is a bit different. It's different because its backdrop is this grand epic called Mahabharata. But what MT is doing is, trying, or he's telling the story, or maybe he's viewing Mahabharata as like a story of a big family. So you can actually study different other novels of MT. You can draw parallels between Bhima of Randamuram and other the so-called human characters, or the normal, non-mythical, mythological characters of MT. Okay. Now I'll try to read some parts from this. Again, I'm only doing it. I'm doing only a few, very few reading. Okay. I'll try to explain the situations in some of this. So okay, so Randamuram, again, it tells the story between the time when Pandavas arrive in Hastinapur after the death of their father Pandu, and till the time, like after the Kurukshetra war, they are going for this Mahaprasthana, that is their walk towards the heaven. Okay. So one of the initial chapters is it tells you about the time when Kunti and her young sons are coming to Hastinapur after Pandu's death in the forest. So Pandavas were very young boys at that time, and they were living in a forest till then. But now they are returning to their country as young princes. Now, as every prince is being introduced to the elders, or to the subjects of Hastinapur, Bhima at that time is like, he was very aware of his body, his big body. He had a very big, huge body, and he in Mahabharata it said that he had a big body and he used to eat a lot, and he was self-aware of this. Okay, and actually you can see this in many places in the book, that Bhima is aware that he looks different, and sometimes he even realizes that others are making fun of him because of his physical look. Okay, and also at this point when he compare himself to his brothers, he's not a crown prince like Yudhishthira, or he is not a great fighter like Arjuna, or he's not handsome like Nakula or Sahadeva. So we can see his insecurities in some of this. Okay, I'll read the Malayalam bit first. എന്നെ ആരോ മുന്നിലേക്ക് നീക്കി നിർത്തി. He's like people are introducing him to the. So അഷ്ടദിക്കുകളൊന്നിന്റെ അധിപനായ വായു ഭഗവാന്റെ അനുഗ്രഹം കൊണ്ടുണ്ടായ പാണ്ഡവൻ മഹാബലവാനാവാൻ പിറന്നവനാണ് ഈ ഭീമസേനൻ. വല്യച്ഛന്റെ മകൻ ദുര്യോധനൻ എന്ന ഉണ്ണി സ്ത്രീകളുടെ സംഘത്തിലെങ്ങാൻ ഉണ്ടെങ്കിൽ അയാളും അത് കേട്ടിരിക്കുമല്ലോ എന്നോർത്ത് ഞാൻ തല ഉയർത്തിപ്പിടിച്ചു. ആളുകൾക്ക് വിശ്വാസമായില്ല എന്നുണ്ടോ? അവരൊക്കെ ചിരിക്കുന്നു. മഹാബലവാനായ വായുപുത്രനെ നോക്കി ചിരിക്കുകയാണ്. So here again, like, okay, he is being introduced, but at the same time he wanted to see if others are hearing that he's being introduced as a strong, who's someone who's going to be very strong and all. And he's looking, he's especially looking for Duryodhana and checking whether he has heard this. Someone pushed me in front, the second Pandava born by the blessings of Vayu. He's destined to become very strong, this Bhimasena. I raised my head and looked to see if Duryodhana, my uncle's son, heard what's being said, if he was still among the women. All of them were laughing. Could it be that people cannot believe what was said? Were they laughing at the boy born to become a very strong man? Again, along the same lines later in this chapter. So they stood respectfully before Yudhishthira, who was only a year older than I. People know Yudhishthira would be a king in future. The visitor paid their respects to Arjuna, who was going to be the greatest of archers. Everyone looked at this wonder kid, pretending to fondle me at close quarters. They're trying to test my strength. I felt uneasy with shame. Compared to other children, was I very different? So again, he's showing insecurities regarding his physical appearance. എന്നേക്കാൾ ഒരു വയസ്സുള്ള യുധിഷ്ഠിരന്റെ മുമ്പിൽ അവർ തൊഴുതു നിന്നു. യുധിഷ്ഠിരൻ ഭാവിയിൽ രാജാവാകാൻ പോകുന്ന ആളാണല്ലോ. വില്ലാളികളിൽ മുമ്പനാവാൻ പോകുന്ന അർജുനനെയും കണ്ടു. എല്ലാവരും അത്ഭുതത്തോടെ എന്നെ നോക്കി. അടുത്തു നിർത്തി ലാളിക്കുന്ന ഭാവത്തിൽ ചിലർ എൻ്റെ ദേഹത്തിൽ അമർത്തി ബലം ചോദിച്ചു. ഞാൻ ലജ്ജ ഒതുക്കി. മറ്റു കുട്ടികളെ അപേക്ഷിച്ച് എൻ്റെ രൂപം അത്ര വ്യത്യസ്തമാണോ? So starting from here, the novel tells about the different or many occasions where Bhima feels that he's being discriminated, or he's being discriminated against, or where he's pushed to second turn, or maybe not that. So again, to mention one such occasion, there is another occasion in the book where one instance where all the Pandavas, or all the young princes, they are going, they went for hunting in the forest. So Bhima is narrating this incident when Arjuna kills an animal here, and it's the first time that Arjuna is killing an animal, and it's a big thing in the life of a fighter or a warrior. So everyone is celebrating that Arjuna has killed his first animal, and they're like offering that animal as a sacrifice, and they're doing puja for that, and so on. And later, when Bhima kills a wild boar, there is no talk of a celebration or any worship. Instead, everybody calls him an idiot and ask him, what have you done? Why are you like why are you acting like a idiot? Why have you done this? And so on. And also, like later, also numerous occasions, like even after he get married to his first wife and his second wife, like Draupadi was the wife, was a common wife of all the Pandavas. Even there, he feels that okay, even though he is the one who Draupadi turns to help in many places in Mahabharata, like when when she was molested or disturbed or attacked at several places in Mahabharata. Bhima is the one that she's going for help, and he's the one who solves many of her problems. But even for her, Bhima was never the favorite. Bhima's place probably came only after Arjuna, or Arjuna, like the great warrior, or Yudhishthira, who was going to be the king, or who was the king. And this actually kind of continues throughout his life. And later he realizes that it's not only his fate. He has seen that this is going to his sons also. So this happened in the Kurukshetra war, that Bhima's eldest son, Ghatotkacha, who Bhima had with a forester named Hidimbi. So Ghatotkacha was also a forester, and he fought in the Kurukshetra war, and but he was finally killed by Karna. So the night Ghatotkacha was killed, Bhima is very sad. He cannot accept the death of his firstborn child, and at this time Krishna came to the place where all the Pandavas are, and Krishna says that it doesn't matter, because it's not the matter, or it's not a matter for sorrow. You should be celebrating, because Karna has used the weapon that he had reserved to kill Arjuna for killing Ghatotkacha. He was forced to use that weapon. So we should be celebrating, because that weapon is used. So Arjuna is safe. So Pandavas should be celebrating for that. And Ghatotkacha, he doesn't matter. Like, he is not a Kshatriya. He is a forester. And he anyway had to die at some point. Okay? And so there is this part where Bhima, after this, the Pandava tents, they started celebrating, in fact. And Bhima is going to the battlefield and sees the dead body of his son. So, like, since he's a forester, nobody even tried to give him a proper burial, because he's a forester. So, I'll read in Malayalam first. ഞാൻ ഇരുട്ടിൽ ഏകാഗിയായി നിന്നു. കൂടാരങ്ങളും പാളയങ്ങളും നിശബ്ദമായി. തേർത്തട്ടുകളിലും ഗജശീർഷങ്ങളിലും സൈനികർ തലചായ്ച്ചു. ഞാൻ നടന്നുകൊണ്ടിരുന്നു. അവന്റെ മൃതദേഹം ഞാൻ കണ്ടു. നെഞ്ചിൽ തറച്ചു കഴിഞ്ഞ വേലിന്റെ ആയാസപ്പിടി ആളുയരത്തിൽ ആകാശത്തിലേക്ക് തെറിച്ചു നിൽക്കുന്നു. അതിനു മുകളിൽ ഒരു കഴുകൻ പറന്നു വന്നിരുന്നു. താഴത്തെ ശരീരത്തെ കൊതിയോടെ നോക്കി. വീരസ്വർഗമില്ലാത്ത കാട്ടാളന് ചിതയൊരുക്കണമെന്നില്ല. ഞാൻ തിരിച്ചു നടന്നു. So this is, I'll say, like a very sad moment from the book. I stood alone in the dark. The tents and the camps fell silent. Soldiers rested their heads on chariots and elephant backs. I kept on walking. I saw his corpse. A cluster of darkness stranded denied a chance to retreat. The weapon struck out of his chest. A vulture perched on it, casting covetous eyes on the body below. A pair need not be prepared for a forester who has no heroic heaven to go. I turned round and walked. Okay. So, yeah. So this was like some moments from the Kurukshetra war. And okay, and one more theme which is like over and over repeated in the book is Bhima and his insecurities about his father. So according to the myth, Pandavas were born from different gods. Kunti had this boon which she could use to get sons from different gods. So accordingly, Karna was Surya's son, and Yudhishthira was the son of Yama, and Bhima was the son of Vayu, god of winds. But later, after Kurukshetra war, Kunti actually reveals at some point that this is not true. So, like myth, like Karna was in fact born from his Suta, and Yudhishthira was born from Vidura, a great man Vidura. So there is this place where he asks, like Bhima is asking about, what about my father? So he's asking Kunti, who was that? He's asking about his father. Who was that? As if startled by my voice, mother raised hers. Red flames of anger spread over her face. She murmured, he came out of the forest, like a giant and fit. I did not know his name. Okay, so Kundi is actually revealing that, okay, your father was a forester. It's not Vayu as you believe it to be. I did not know when mother left and when darkness descended and began spreading over the emptiness of the forest. I pricked up my ears, waiting with great eagerness for a message, even as a strong wind let loose by God, Vayu hit the treetops. So for his whole life, he thought that he is the son of Vayu. So he's like trying to wait to get, or he's waiting to get a message from his father. The wind laughed aloud in my ears. Okay. So, okay. അതാരായിരുന്നു? അപ്പോൾ അമ്മ എൻ്റെ ശബ്ദം കേട്ട് ഞെട്ടിത്തെറിച്ച പോലെ മുഖമുയർത്തി. അവിടെ രോഷത്തിന്റെ ചെന്തീനാളങ്ങൾ പടർന്നു കയറുന്നത് ഞാൻ കണ്ടു. അമ്മ പിറുപിറുത്തു. കൊടുങ്കാട്ടിൽ നിന്ന് അദ്ദേഹം കയറി വന്നു. ചങ്ങലയൊഴിഞ്ഞ ചണ്ടമാരുതനെ പോലെ, പേരറിയാത്ത ഒരു കാട്ടാളൻ. അമ്മ തിരിച്ചു നടന്നതും ഇരുട്ട് താഴെ ഇറങ്ങി കാടിന്റെ ശൂന്യതയിൽ മേയാൻ തുടങ്ങിയതും ഞാൻ അറിഞ്ഞില്ല. ഇരുണ്ട വൃക്ഷത്തലപ്പുകളെ വിറപ്പിച്ച് ദേവൻ കയറൂരി വിട്ട ഒരു കാറ്റ് കടന്നു പോകുമ്പോൾ ഞാൻ സന്ദേശത്തിനായി വെമ്പലോടെ ചെവിയോർത്തു. കാറ്റ് പൊട്ടിച്ചിരിച്ചു. Okay. So, yeah, so might maybe at this point might think that as like about the book, is it like a complete retelling of Mahabharata? Like has he contradicted what Vyasa has written, or has he retold, or he has changed the story a lot? So in MT's own words, what he has said about the book is that he hasn't changed anything from what Vyasa has told already. What he has said is, and I'm quoting MT, I have only, or MT has only filled the pregnant silences left by Vyasa. So there is no change from the original text. He has only, like, there were some gaps in Mahabharata, and MT has kind of interpreted that silences by Vyasa. So maybe with one more sentence from the book. Okay. Okay. So this is after, okay, around the time of Kurukshetra, like Bhima is telling himself about how the plight of women at that time. So he's saying, സ്ത്രീയെ പണയം വെച്ച രാജാവും പണയം സ്വീകരിച്ച രാജാവും തമ്മിലാണ് ഇപ്പോൾ ചേരി തിരഞ്ഞ് യുദ്ധത്തിനൊരുങ്ങി നിൽക്കുന്നത്. രോഷത്തോടെ ഞാൻ മനസ്സിൽ പറഞ്ഞു, സ്ത്രീകൾ പണയ പണ്ടങ്ങൾ അല്ലെങ്കിൽ പാഥേയ പൊതികൾ. So this was just before the Kurukshetra war, and Bhima is saying that, see, what is the war between? The war is between the king who had pawned his woman, his wife, and another who had accepted this wager. And now they are raging against each other in a war. And he's telling himself that women for us were ornaments to be pledged, or just food packets for journeys. So with this note, I would move to the story of a powerful or important female character in Mahabharata, my next book, Ini Njan Urangate, translated to And Now Let Me Sleep. So this book, I'll be very brief here. I know that almost, okay, I have like 10 minutes maybe. Okay, so this is by P.K. Balakrishnan. It's published in 1973. Again, won many awards, including Vailar Award, translated to English, Tamil, and Kannada. So Tamil translations, the first translation to my knowledge is called "And Now Let Me Sleep" itself. There is a second translation. It's called okay, I'm not sure. It's called "After the Kurukshetra War," or no, Kurukshetra Battle and Beyond. Or okay, I'm not sure about that. Okay, okay. Right. So this is again a POV, like a point of view of Mahabharata. It's a retelling of, specifically it's a retelling of the Sauptika Parva and Stri Parva of Mahabharata. So this is the part after the Kurukshetra war in Mahabharata. And this is said through the viewpoint of Draupadi. Actually, it's a story of Karna, or how the life of Karna changes or unfolds in front of Draupadi. So just to give the context, so after Kurukshetra war, Kunti reveals that Karna was her firstborn, and as he tells Yudhishthira this, Yudhishthira was very sad. Yudhishthira is so very sad that he has killed his own brother in the uh, war. And he looks around, he sees only widows around, and they're like everybody. So war has caused a lot of destruction, and he had even killed his own brother. And Yudhishthira was like, Yudhishthira is tired here, and he decides that he's going to leave the throne. He decides that he's going back to forest, and he doesn't want to be the king anymore. Draupadi at this point is really angry because she cannot understand why Yudhishthira is doing this sacrifice, and for all reasons he's doing it for Karna, as someone she hated a lot. Okay, and someone who thought was like one of the key reasons for the plight of Pandavas. And she's also angry that Yudhishthira is doing this for Karna, even though his own sons were killed in the war, and his ancestors like Bhishma and his teachers like Drona were killed. But in spite of that, he's doing this for Karna, and she is also like, she also has to go back to the forest. And for whom? Okay, so the first part of this is like so in this part, Draupadi is like kind of cursing Karna, that, and she's saying that why are you like, why is this happening to me, and why is Yudhishthira doing this for Karna? Okay, so it goes like this. അവൾ സ്വയം മറന്ന് ശാപവചസ് ഉച്ചരിക്കുന്ന പോലെ ആവർത്തിച്ച് പറഞ്ഞു കർണൻ. പാണ്ഡവ ദുർവിധിക്കുള്ള പര്യായമാണ് ആ പേര്. He's saying that okay, Karnan is the like no other name of the bad luck of Pandavas. ഉറക്കത്തിൽ അരും കൊല ചെയ്യപ്പെട്ട സ്വന്തം ഉണ്ണികളുടെ പേരിലല്ല, പടയിൽ വെട്ടിവീഴ്ത്തിയ അഭിമന്യുകുമാരന്റെ പേരിലല്ല, പടയിൽ കൊല ചെയ്ത പിതാമഹന്റെയും ആചാര്യന്റെയും പേരിലല്ല. Yudhishthira is not doing this for his own sons, or not for Abhimanyu, who was the darling of the entire Pandava clan. And he's not even doing this for Bhishma or Drona. He's doing this for Karna. കർണന്റെ പേരിലാണ് യുധിഷ്ഠിരൻ നിർവേദിയായി തപോവനം പ്രാപിക്കുന്നതെന്ന ചിന്ത ഹൃദയത്തിൽ തീക്കനൽ വിതർന്നു. Okay, so after this, the rest of the novel is like okay, so again retelling of Karna's story to Draupadi by a number of people, including Kundi, the Narada Maharshi, and Sanjayan, and so on. And finally, Draupadi realizes the greatness of Karna, or the bad luck that he had to go through. And the novel kind of ends at a place where like Draupadi realizes that yeah, Karna in fact was a good man, was a great man. And she kind of wishes that the Karna, if only Karna was not dead in the Kurukshetra war, or like a lot of ifs, like what if he was with the Pandavas, and so on. Okay, so yeah, so that's it. As I said, I'm very brief in the for the second book. Okay, so this again, what did I learn from these books? So first is that Mahabharata is still relevant. it's not only epic. So there is a verse about Mahabharata which goes like this, that everything in this, that is everything in Mahabharata, is also around you. Okay, and also anything around you, it can be seen in Mahabharata. So there's a verse to this effect, and it is true. You look around, and or like I was reading these two books for the talk, and at many instances I can actually draw parallels to things happening around us at this point. And you go through all the emotions that maybe the characters in Mahabharata also go through. Okay. And second, see, these are like two different narratives of the same story I have said. And there are places where the narratives agree to each other, and there are places where the narratives may look different. But which one of them is the correct version? It's difficult to say. But actually, you cannot say which is the correct version or which is the right version. And you need not say which is the right version, because the world around us has enough space to accommodate the viewpoints of all of us. And there is no need for one truth or only one version. Okay, there can be many truth, and there is no need for one truth that everybody should stick to. There can be more than one truth, because the world is diverse with different and with diverse people, diverse beliefs, and so on. And that is how it should be, and that is how it's supposed to be. And with this, I conclude. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Pradisha, for a very interesting and very insightful peek into the Malayalam literature and the two narratives that you exposed us to. Any questions or comments for Pradisha?
Yeah, Pradisha, this is Meenakshi here. So I'm not 100% sure, but we hear that a lot of communities in Kerala follow a matrilinear inheritance. Descendants and inheritance of property was traced through females. Do you think Malayalam literature has any strong influence because of this unique practice by the community, which is not typically elsewhere followed in India?
Okay, so again, I think this can be even converted to a debate. So matrilineal, it is only present in some communities. It's not something which is present in all communities in Kerala. But okay, whether it has affected the literature, yes. So even if you look at a lot of works like other works of even like MT and all, it tells the story of this Nair households which have like follows the matrilineal community, the matrilineal way of inheritance. Yes, so he's discussing like different different situations in this. Yeah, so I can say, okay, it might have affected the literature in some, like Indulekha also, like, okay, that is also set in a matrilineal household. But having said that,
Yeah, you
I think I should,
specifically said she was the
yes,
first
no, I
feminist.
should also comment that, to my knowledge, this matrilineal that was only followed in the inheritance of property. It didn't okay, there were again, I'm not a great like expert here, but from what I've read, I think what I understood is that uh, it didn't always convert to immediate power to women. Didn't it was only matrilineal, it's not matriarchal. The patriarchy was still there. It was still a man dominated society. Only the property was like going, or the inheritance was through women. It didn't mean that the women became the head of the family. Nothing like that happened. But again, I have read that, earlier, maybe like if you go centuries back, in some places it was like that, like women had more power. And there are some writings, like for example, if you read the works of Manu S. Pillai and all. He's like a very young historian with a number of works. So he has mentioned that it was the colonial era, that is the invasion from the West, or the British, and even before that Portuguese, like that has added this patriarchal element to the Malayalam, the Kerala society. Yeah, because but yeah, as I said, like there are like different opinions, so cannot say like, but it have affected a lot. But again, it's not like
Because I've
uniform.
read.
No, it's not a uniform thing throughout Kerala. It's only in the, to my knowledge, it's only the Nayar community which follows the. I may be wrong. It follows the matrilineal inheritance of property. Yeah.
I mean, they say about it in a very positive way, because they say Nayar men were warriors, so they led uncertain lives. They wanted to protect their women, so they changed it to matrilineal.
No, like
So I
again,
thought that was a very
comparatively,
unique thing.
it was a better arrangement, I will say. Like if you compare between no power at all and power to only the inheritance, of course, it was a better situation. But what I said is it was not all, it was not like a women dominated society at all.
Yeah,
Thanks.
I think
Thanks, Pradesh.
that's a very interesting point. So even being a matrilineal system did not prevent patriarchy from kind of gaining its root or
So
proliferate.
actually, that is the first novel I mentioned, Indulekha. That was actually Indulekha. The character Indulekha is fighting against the male characters in his. So that time, your uncle was your guardian, and so her fight, kind of, you can think of that novel as the fight. Her fight. I won't say it fight, but how she stood up for her life, her own life, against her uncle and other male members of the family. Yeah, so it doesn't mean that since it was a matrilineal society, she had that power. Cannot say. There were still women who were oppressed, and even though they had the property, that didn't mean that they could use the property. It doesn't convert to that. Okay, they had the right to property, therefore they could use the property as they liked. This was rare. That was still rare. The property was still controlled by the men, but it was only inherited through the women. So,
Thank you.
at least that is my understanding.
Any more questions?
Pratisha, this is Jaya.
Yes.
It's not like a question, but so would you say the language that M.T. Vasudevan has used, is it common man's language, or because
Oh yes,
his
yes.
language also has a lot of metaphors in it? I mean, I think most Malayalam literature has a lot of metaphors in it, right? So even songs and everything has. So
Yeah. So again, my personal opinion, I think Randamuram is written different. It's in a different way from how MT has written his other novels.
right.
So as again, other novels are like mainly from the village society. So so there is like, we even say that it looks like MT's Malayalam. So that means MT's characters mostly talked in. So he's from this Palakkad, that region, Valluvanadan region, and his characters mainly talked in that dialect.
Yeah.
So if you even see some of these Malayalam movies till recent, still maybe a few years ago, everybody talked in that language in popular culture. Even though we had like in different places had their different dialects. Many people, I think, so MT is kind of wrote that in that way, and also that dialect is a little so he followed that, but Randamuram has a different. It was like, again, even though it is a characters from Mahabharata, so they kind of talked in a little bit more
Majestic
with pride and majesty. So that way, I think it's a little different from other works of MT. But MT usually writes in his language is like more poetic,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So if you compare it with Bashir and all, it's different.
Right.
Right? It's like more literary type.
Right.
But yes, but it was not very unaccessible. It was
Yeah, you
common.
can understand, right?
Right.
Yeah, because he writes things like tea canal, and I mean that's like when a person gets angry, there are cinders flying and things like that, right? I mean it's very
Right,
metaphorical.
right. So, but that I think it's yeah, that is unique to this novel. I think
Yeah,
Randamudam, he has used a slightly more yeah,
vectors.
literary kind of
Yeah,
language.
yeah.
Like,
It's actually pretty
but
nice. Yeah. Thanks for picking up all the nice excerpts from the
okay.
novel. Yeah. Thanks, Pratisha. It's great. Yeah.
Yes, so if there are no more questions, thank you very much, Padisha, for volunteering and for a very interesting, insightful session. Thank you very much.
Thank you.